Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Brand Innovators livecast. I am David Teicher, the Chief Content Officer here. I hope everyone at home is staying safe and healthy. As we all know, our country is facing multiple simultaneous crises right now, not just the unprecedented pandemic, but also a civil rights crisis that's unfortunately far from new. Today's program, our debut of Brands Across America, the first in a series, is going to be specifically devoted to highlighting the philanthropic and purpose-driven efforts led by some of the amazing brands and marketers in this industry in response to the pandemic. As we all know, brands have reach, they have resources, and can be powerful drivers of change and support for communities large and small. Today's program will focus, like I said, primarily on the response to the pandemic. However, we are working on part 2 already, which will feature some amazing speakers, including the Chief Marketing Officer of American Express and others, which will highlight also the meaningful ways that in which brands have acted or should be acting in response to the current situation that's going on in major cities across the country as well. So today you will hear from the chief marketing officers of Adobe, of Burger King, of Walgreens, of Panera Bread, and Equinox, the chief brand officer of Carhartt, the EVP and chief operating officer of Unilever North America Beauty and Personal Care, the vice president of brand at John Hancock, and a group of local New York coffee shop owners. And again, we are talking about the myriad ways in which brands and organizations have rallied to support different communities, large and small, from small businesses to students to healthcare professionals to manufacturing masks and protective gear. There are lots of different ways brands can and should be helping. And we are excited to recognize those efforts today. Our co-founders, Brandon and Mark, who you may know, have asked me to thank not just our awesome team and our amazing sponsors, but really just to thank and give a special shout out to our community. Community is the reason that Brand Innovators, that they founded this company 9 years ago, and it's our community that's powered our growth. It's our community that we've been focused on and trying to work with and help throughout these challenging times. And it's our community that, thanks to you guys, that we've been able to produce these live casts on almost a daily basis for the past 3 months since pivoting to our virtual content. So a very special thank you to all of our community members. I want to thank the New York Post, our amazing media partner, who you may have seen covered some of the actions and programs that our speakers today will be talking about, and is simultaneously streaming this on their platform as well. So thank you to the New York Post. You'll hear from them shortly. And again, thank you to our team who has been working tirelessly behind the scenes in getting everything ready for today's full day virtual program. One more special thank you for those of you who are new or not new. You may have seen that we have transitioned to Cisco WebEx. When we launched the Brand Innovators livecast, we knew back on April 1st that was going to be phase 1, and we are going to think about how we can enhance the experience. And we are very thrilled to have Cisco WebEx as our technology partner and platform, and couldn't be more proud to have transitioned to their technology to power all of our live casts moving forward. So before we begin, I just want to give you an overview of the platform. So again, it's a little bit different than our previous dashboard. So first of all, I would say you can, I would recommend that you move everything into grid view. So you should see a button on the top right corner of the video interface that will allow you to access the grid view, and that will feature all of the speakers simultaneously that are on camera. If you do have any questions for today's speakers, as always, we do allocate time at the tail end of every fireside chat and panel for audience questions. We want to get to as many of them as possible. So please, you can find the Q&A function on the right-hand side, typically on the bottom right-hand corner. If it's not open already, there are 3 dots that on the toolbar, so you can click on the 3 dots and open those, the Q&A widget. It's not too late to invite a colleague. So if you do have any friends, team members, industry acquaintances that you think may find today's content valuable and informative, you can certainly just send them the same URL you used to log in. As always, on-demand viewing will be available for today's program. So you will receive an email from Brand Innovators after everything wraps with instructions on how to access the on-demand footage. If you are looking for a dial-in number, this live cast can be dialed into those same three dots on the toolbar. You can just click on those and open audio connection, which will provide dial-in instructions, or you can just add your phone number and the platform. The magic of Cisco WebEx will just call you directly. We do recommend the video, but if that's the best option for you, you can access audio only. If you will be simultaneously chatting or would like to chat with your fellow attendees about today's content, you are encouraged to do so on Twitter, on LinkedIn, using the hashtag BILivecast. So with that, I would like to once again thank Cisco WebEx for being our official technology partner for Brand Innovators Virtual Summits and for facilitating a great experience and event for us. And I believe we have a short video to play for you from them.
There are times for casual meetings, happy hour meetings, informal meetings. But when it's time for important meetings, there's WebEx. Because when you're doing important work, your meetings, users, devices, and data should be secure. Security built in from the start. No, this is collaboration without compromise. Safe, private, and secure. WebEx.
So thank you again to our friends at WebEx. With that, we are going to kick off today's program with Scott Monty, who is going to be our guest MC. You may have seen him on some of the other Brand Innovators live casts that we've done. We love Scott, so we're going to bring him on, and Scott's going to be kicking things off and chatting with our friends at the New York Post to set the tone for today's program before segueing into our first speaker. Scott, are you there?
David, I am here and glad to be here once again. You know, the way you introduced me there, I feel like Troy McClure from The Simpsons.
Yes.
I'm Scott Monty. You may remember me from such live casts as Brand Innovators BI Summits #2.
It's a bit iconic. So, I love that. And we're thrilled to have you back, Scott. So, yes, thank you for being here. I see Sean Giancola is here from the New York Post, which is welcome, Sean. And thank you for being our amazing media partner today. That's my cue to bow out. So, Scott, I'll be here waiting if you need anything, but I will turn the virtual stage over to you.
All right. Thank you, David. Great to be here. It's an honor to be here once again representing Brand Innovators. I think what we've seen here over the last few weeks is an evolution of behavior. And we're going to talk about that throughout the day today, certainly in the opening remarks, but also with our guest panelists and speakers throughout the day. Just by way of background, I'm Scott Monty. I'm a former executive for Ford Motor Company. I led digital and social media digital communications and social media there for, about 6 years or so. Started out during a crisis. If you remember the carpocalypse of 2008, 2009, when the global automotive industry nearly melted down on top of the financial industry. It was fraught times. It was something that we were not prepared for. And, every brand that was involved in that had to take a stake in it, had to decide what it stood for, how it wanted to talk with its community, right? And David mentioned community before. I think that's so important because that's where our strength comes from. That's where we kind of sow all of the seeds that are trust based. That is where we establish relationships, and that is where we demonstrate what we do consistently and repeatedly over time. And that's how you build trust, by consistent and repeated behavior. I think about some of the brands that we've seen, and evolved pretty well throughout the pandemic. First it was kind of shock and paralyzation, and then folks started to swing into action. We saw brands offering their services for free or opening it up to certain disadvantaged communities. I think about Adobe and just giving its software away to students and teachers around the country as just one example. And then we saw brands beginning to pivot, to start to reorganize their business operations in some way to actually provide a different kind of value because of the resources they had. And that gave us an opportunity to see how resourceful and nimble and flexible brands could be as they adapted to the new reality. And that's interesting because for me, coming from the automotive industry, we saw in World War II all of the major US automakers convert to making Jeeps and tanks and boats and planes for the war effort. They completely transformed their business. They did it not because they had to, but they did it because it was the right thing to do in support of the country. I think that's what we're seeing now in terms of brands across America, our theme today of how brands are actually contributing to the fabric of society. We worked our way through this pandemic, and now, of course, as David mentioned, we've got another crisis on our hands with regard to, well, to just call it Black Lives Matter would be, to me, a little too superficial. This is a deep rift in our society that we've grappled with for, well, since our beginning, and it's never really been solved. And when we see brands that are doing things consistently, brands like Nike, right? Nike that took a stand with Colin Kaepernick when he was first let go of from the NFL, right? That's what brand purpose should mean, and that's what builds trust. So to talk about this a little more and to talk about a brand's involvement with this, I want to bring on Sean Giancola. Sean is the CEO and publisher of the New York Post. He previously served as the chief revenue officer at the Post, and he was responsible for all the revenue operations across their multiple business units, including page6.com, decider.com, Post Studios, News IQ, Page 6 TV, etc. He has a history of executive management in AOL advertising, where he was responsible for national sales. And he comes with a background in many brands and advertising and marketing positions, such as American Express and Time. And of course, the New York Post is a proud sponsor and participant of what we're doing here today. Sean, welcome to the program.
Morning. Morning. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. How are you holding up?
The Post and News Corp, obviously, the last several months has been challenging. But we took it, head on. We prepared for it. And, to say we've had little disruption would be undermining the true sense of what's going on. But I would say is we've mitigated the disruption, evolved, and and basically adapted to what the new is. And I think that goes a long way of setting yourself up for the future. So we're doing well. I mean, the Post thinks we play a big integral part, particularly in the New York marketplace. You talk about community. We believe we're a staple in this community in New York. And now with obviously the internet and digital, we're a national brand, but our roots and our DNA are in the market that's probably been hit the hardest with the pandemic. So we feel a responsibility to participate across not only the editorial information part of it, but also the commercial side. So, it's been a challenge, but it's been, an opportunity as well for the Post to shine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would imagine in the publishing business, you never get a day off. I mean, you are always on, and the news cycle now is 24/7, certainly not like it used to be, where you barely have time to think. How are you keeping your team motivated and kind of pointed all in the same direction amid all of this cacophony?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to, I got this position, about 18 months ago. I inherited an amazing newsroom that is nimble, passionate, committed. So it doesn't take me a lot to motivate those folks. I think what I do, I leave it up to Michelle Godelf and Stephen Lynch, who are my two managing editors, both digitally and in print, to really set the stage and the path of what we're doing from an editorial and information. What I try to do is just organize and make sure that we're set up for success. We've done that in spades. It's interesting. A lot of people maybe on this call don't realize that editors and producers, as well as the people that work in the plant in the Bronx, we have hundreds of people that put this paper out every day. They're actually termed critical workers. So through the whole pandemic, because of what we're in and the business we're in, providing critical information, we sit outside of a lot of the other business situations with regards to employees and how do you operate, and you talk about how we're doing. I mean, we have several hundred people go to the Bronx every day to put the paper out. Talk about security and safety issues that we had to go through over the last several months to do that, because we think it's not only the right thing to do, but we feel we're critical to the community. So that's part of the pivot in the new. Now we're setting the stage for the next phase, and that is recovery. How do we help New York and the broader sense, the U.S., recover from this? So you asked me what I need to do. To be honest with you, we were set up in a pretty good situation, and it's really about the people, and the Post News Corp have done a tremendous job.
Yeah. Well, the reputation that the New York Post has from throughout the years. I mean, some of the most iconic front pages and headlines. I think that speaks just volumes about the brand, about how you take your job seriously, but not too seriously, right? You're in the business of informing people, but there's nothing wrong with keeping a sense of humor while you're at it, or kind of poking fun at the softer side of humanity when you can. One of my favorite headlines, and you probably have it framed somewhere, is a headless body found in topless bar. I mean, that's just
That's widely on our floor in New York in many offices. It's iconic, and we pride ourselves in, like you said, the levity of news and content. There's balance there. We still are passionate about the quality, but there's a balance about the delivery, and I think that's really important, especially what we're going through right now, what the country's going through in so many levels. I think quality and levity and delivery is really critical.
Mm. And that's interesting, because humor, especially in fraught times like these, it's not easy to do. If it's not in your DNA, it's really, really difficult to pull off humor. What's your advice for some brands out there as they try to grapple with what their responsibility is to the wider public in these times?
Working at multiple media companies, like you mentioned before, I've worked at American Express and Time and AOL. What I've learned at News Corp and the Post, and what I still am passionate about, which is whatever brand you are, whether you're a publishing brand or a content brand, or you're a physical brand, you have to be true to who you are. And I think that's what I pride myself in the Post. You talk about the headlines, and what I call the voice and our IP. I think, especially in today's situation, you have to be authentic, and you have to be real, and you have to be true to what you are. You can't pivot to be something different because of the circumstances. And that's the advice I would give, because we're all, not all, maybe that's a strong word, we all want to sometimes pivot because that's where we think the puck is going. But I think that the advice I would give, and I give to everyone at the Post, we are who we are because of who we are, and be true to that, and just do it the best you can.
Yeah, I think that's great. And excuse me, I've seen some brands on Twitter in particular who have spent the last 5, 6, 7 years building their brands up as snark machines. And guess what? Snark really doesn't work for people in times like this where they're thinking about more serious things. I mean, yeah, humor will work from time to time, but when it's a real cutting kind of thing, that's not what we're looking for. And yet for them to try and be something else at this point, to your very point, it's inauthentic. It's not who they are. And it's not the muscle memory that they've developed over the past few years. So in the absence of that, if you can't, if who you are doesn't necessarily fit with the reality of the times, and if trying to be something you're not is inauthentic, where does that leave a brand at that point?
You know, it's a good question. I'm not sure I have the perfect answer for that one. I just think there's always room, uh, where you have to pick your spots, and do it. I think do it, obviously prudently, uh, and balance that, because you could hurt your brand. You could hurt it by doing nothing, but you can really probably hurt it worse by doing the wrong thing. And that would be my advice. And what we try to do at the Post is what's out in front of us, what is the right thing to do at the right time. And sometimes you sacrifice things by making those decisions, whether it's monetizing things, or, that was a tough thing about balancing this. I mean, we're a lot of probably people on this call run businesses that are financially impacted. Your first reaction is, how do I mitigate the financial responsibilities? At News Corp and the Post, yes, we are a public company. We have a fiduciary responsibility for many, many people. But at the same time, we're in the content business and we're in the information business. And we try to balance that and set it up for success in both things. And you have to make sacrifices. And the edit is the thing where we lead with is, what is the right thing to do for our audiences? And we did some things, in the pandemic that I think supported this. And as we come through recovery, we're thinking about other platforms and things that we give back to the community.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right approach, Sean. I mean, as you said, there's nothing wrong with just shutting up for a while, with saying nothing. If anything, it may show some respect and restraint. And quite frankly, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little burnt out at this point. Going on 90 days of an intensive crisis. I mean, look, we had to do this for 6 months nonstop while I was at Ford, so I get it. Uh, but that was a smaller scale, right? This is something that it's eating into us, whether we're at work or at home. It's coming at us from all angles. There's nothing wrong with a little quiet reflection. But at the same time, if we do say something that is untoward or inappropriate, well, hey, that's life. I mean, we're all humans in this. And I think to the extent that brands can own up to that, you're not going to get it right every time. Yeah, the word unprecedented keeps getting thrown around, and in some ways, appropriately so. Who knows what the right thing to do is right now? We just do the best we can. And I think if we can show the humanity behind that and the good intent, we should be okay.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think you have to go with your instincts on what to do in the moment. And a lot of the companies you're going to hear from today, we did a special section in the paper on Wednesday highlighting all the good work. And it wasn't, I believe these companies aren't doing it for self-serving. I think they're doing it for the right reason. And we wanted to take the opportunity at the Post to elevate and to showcase what they're doing. And I think that's important. I also think showcasing what you're doing to your employees and to the greater community is really critical. We did a thing in the paper just showcasing our employees, all the good people at the plant and the editors, the front lines, the photographers that are putting themselves in harm risk to try to cover. It was just a give back and highlight. And then we do a feature in the newspaper called Hometown Heroes. And I know other media companies are doing so much of the similar things, and I think that's really important. I think it's a balance between recognizing your people, your teams, the community, and everyone that's contributing to getting out of this pandemic, and then ultimately the recovery. And we're going to be part of the recovery. New York needs to recover. Even though I said we're a national brand, our roots are New York. We feel committed to this community, and we're thinking about initiatives. We've already given $1 million in media for good causes. We're going to continue to give media for good causes moving forward, to raise money and to evangelize the good work that so many people and companies are doing. And then on the editorial side, we're going to do the same. We're going to be launching something called Opening Now, and when it's right time to do it, when New York starts opening, we want to be there to help this community look at how we're going to reopen New York and get out of this and be successful.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, Sean, thank you so much for spending a little bit of your time. I know it's a busy time, certainly in the news business, so we do appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Giancola, the CEO of New York Post.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
A
Take
pleasure.
care.
Well, I mean, the things that Sean is talking about there, I think they're not only applicable to the Post, but I think they're going to be themes that I predict you'll be hearing more about throughout the day today. So let's cue ourselves up for more of exactly that, shall we? Next up, we have Tony Ambrosia, the Chief Brand Officer for Carhartt, who is joining us. In this role, Tony leads brand engagement at critical touchpoints, including TV commercials and social media, retail marketing, and Carhartt's D2C, that is direct to consumer business, to better connect consumers with the Carhartt brand. And as the Chief Brand Officer, Tony is championing Carhartt's values while preserving its heritage. That's something you probably heard come through earlier today as we were talking. Under Tony's leadership, the D2C business continues to deliver ultimate brand experience to consumers. And on the marketing side, Tony continues to celebrate hard work and amplify the brand's role in the lives of its hardworking people. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
And interviewing Tony is Scott Hendrickson, Senior VP of News and Global Business Development at Vice Media. Vice has been burning it up lately. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there at News Corp, Scott serves in that role, spearheading their go-to-market strategy for News IQ, the first solution that leverages all of the first-party data, social listening technologies, and premium inventory as one of a unified marketing solution. So Scott brings 17 plus years of experience of building industry-leading marketing solutions that benefit both the brand marketer and the consumer. He's built businesses within both venture-backed startups and some of the largest e-commerce and digital media organizations, including PayPal, eBay, Drizzly, Ware, and Time Warner. And one of Scott's firm beliefs he shares with Walt Disney, who said, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." Well, Scott, we hope you will do more than the impossible here today. Welcome.
All right. It looks like you guys scraped my LinkedIn pretty solid for that intro. And as I think, yes, sir. So for many of you that know me, I recently joined Vice Media from News Corp. So absolutely thrilled to be able to come right after Sean Giancola and see some of my old comrades do really great work. So just to kick off here. For those who know me, I'm a really optimist and very much a high energy guy in this business. However, I think that now in this world, I'm pretty sad. I'm confused. I think that we talked a little bit about this yesterday, Tony. But I think for many of us, unfortunately it's a country we're divided right now. We've got systematic racism happening. Guns are flying off the shelves. Mom and pop businesses are really in trouble. Newsrooms are under fire. So, God bless the New York Post and Wall Street Journal and New York Times and everybody. But, seeking the truth right now has never been harder. And I'm challenged. I'm struggling. The one thing that's given me some comfort, right, is that I think it's time for all of us to speak up and be loud. Working for a company like Vice, recently I joined about 30 days ago, very much a purpose-driven organization. It's been core to this company's DNA. And for our employees internally, it's given all of us a lot of energy and ambition to get up and go to work every day, wherever we are. And, I think what Scott said earlier, I think there is a time to be quiet in certain places, and now is absolutely a time to listen across the board. But I think that we all need to leverage our resources, our power, our money, and our brand voices to be able to impact change. I think change is what needs to happen here. And if you look at what consumers are looking for, they're looking for leadership in a lot of different ways. They're looking for places that they can trust, and that's not just media companies, that is brands. But I think that we all have a very strong role to play there. So normally I would open up with a joke here, guys, but I think that our times are very much very different. And what's guided me a little bit from someone that I'm very close to, who said is opposed. It's like, what hurts my brother hurts me, and what helps my brother helps me. So this isn't about one group that's struggling. This is about us collectively across the world. So with that somber intro, I'm excited to talk to you, Tony, and share some of the thoughts that we had yesterday. Because you're no stranger to purpose-driven marketing. I mean, you guys are great at it. You're experts at it. But before we get into the weeds, I'd love just to give some context, if you could. What is Carhartt today? Who's your consumer? Let's just build a base, because so that way people have some familiarity, and then let's build from there. If that's cool.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott and team, for letting me have the privilege to represent the 5,300 associates at Carhartt on this panel today. Carhartt's a 131-year-old family-owned and operated business. The founding family still owns and operates Carhartt today. Our leader, Mark Valade, is the 4th generation, and the 5th generation is actively involved. Since the beginning, we were built and based upon listening to hardworking people. It started with bibs, and to this day, our mission statement still reads, we build rugged products to serve and protect hardworking people. So when people ask us about the folks that we serve, it's really easy for us to identify and continue to focus on the consumers, the hardworking people that we have really come to know for over 130 years. And whether they're farmers, ranchers, plumbers, truck drivers, they really love to build as craftspeople with their hands. And that's the theme that we've always recognized too, is they're incredibly capable, and they have the ability to think with their hands in ways that many of us cannot. And we have such great respect for what they do. So when you think about who does Carhartt serve and protect, those are the people that build, the people that create, the people that make. And that's our commitment. Our commitment is to continue to serve them with rugged gear. So we make clothing to really outfit them for an entire workday. And we found through the years, they love to wear our gear into the field, love to pursue outdoor passions and activities as well.
Yeah. So, how do you think about brand purpose, and how do you communicate with consumers? I mean, this isn't, for many brands, unfortunately, I think as they're looking at this this ecosystem that's in front of us right now, and some are really, really struggling, right? But purpose-driven marketing has been part of your DNA for a while. So how have you instilled that across your organization, and how do you think about it?
Well, we're very fortunate. It starts at the top. Again, our leader, he's truly focused on and driven to serve and protect hardworking people. So that is the purpose that we strive for as we think about, okay, how do we contribute to those folks building a better world? And as we continue to pursue that purpose, one of the primary objectives that we've followed is we're going to continue to make gear that's worth reaching for, gear that serves their hard-earned dollar, and we're gonna work on and work in partnership with organizations that, before March, right? Before March, we were all moving towards the same plans that we probably all created from a corporate, point of view. And immediately March came and we had to make adjustments. And for us, the adjustments were significant in the sense that we went from saying, we're going to stand for taking on extreme weather conditions to, whoa, we have to really review and sit back and think about, the incredible people that we want to be a champion for. And those incredible people are now being recognized as everyday heroes. But for us, it was an opportunity to really shine a light on the folks that have driven our purpose from really the founding of the company. And we've stayed true to that as we've entered and really continue to operate through this, the pandemic that we're all facing. It has definitely been hard on every company I can imagine. We are very fortunate to have an incredible consumer base and an incredible retail base as well, partners and customers that have been able to remain open to serve and protect these people with the gear they need. So, when people ask us, how does it guide us? We're committed to serving and protecting those folks with gear, but then we've also been focused on organizations, that also develop and address, prior to all of this, there's a growing skilled trades gap. And we've continued to work on, okay, who are the partners out there that we can work with to help address this and play a part. We're not, we don't pretend to have all the answers, because we know we don't. And as you and I spoke yesterday, it's really and you mentioned it at the beginning, it feels like a time to listen more than to talk. But we know that as a brand, we need to speak as well. But we're also, working hard to keep listening, because there are new ways that we can contribute and help and really, play a part in building a better world that involves, allowing folks to pursue their passions in the trades, and what we call, the hard work that people do to keep America running.
When one thing that I think when you think about brand building, you talk about brand purpose. How much of this is a short-term impact, makes a short-term impact, versus are you looking at it with a longer view? You're obviously a family-run company. You get benefits that maybe some other companies don't have. But when it comes to something like this, do you have it? Is your view to always take the longer road, or is it about securing this quarter when making these decisions?
No, it's the longer road. It absolutely has to be and continues to be. It is the longer road that is critical. As a 131-year company, we walk around saying, as the generation that gets to be a contributor to this company and this brand, what are we doing to ensure that it continues for another 130 years? So when we think about the decisions we make, it's an incredible, privilege to play a role and to play a part in the storied history of Carhartt, knowing that each generation has a chance to contribute to its advancement. And one of our core values is to walk bravely into the future, because we know, as you're 131 years old, you have to embrace change. Imagine the number of generations Carhartt has had to evolve and really listen to and improve upon the product and the service and the experience and the approach. And that's why we're still around. So we are very, very fortunate to be with an organization that allows us to do that. Now we'll all be honest too. As a company, we're so committed to our associates. We have to do the right thing in the short term to make sure that we can continue to support our associates, and our leadership continues to do that too, to make sure that we're able to support our associates as well during these times.
Yeah. So as you, through that lens too, right? The ecosystem is changing from a sales standpoint, right? In a major way, and we've worked at Vice and in other places, doing a lot of work to drive, people, whether it be driving to Target, driving to Walmart, driving to direct to consumer now, and how is that evolving for you? And is this a long-term evolution that's now all of a sudden at your front door, or is how do you evolve your marketing channels to align with your sales channels now?
I'm very fortunate to have a passionate team that has really been focused on our digital experience, because we like to think of it as an experience. When you're engaging and interacting with people digitally, typically through their phones, right? Most of us have them. It has to have a utility. It can't just be a message. It has to have a utility that it really, we like to say, powers the experience. Does it power the journey? Does it help them learn more? Does it help them connect to the next step? And we've been focused on that for a long time. We still have a long way to go. We had a great meeting just the other day on this. But we have seen since March, when everybody had to start spending more time at home, and obviously couldn't rely on going to the same stores that they typically did. We have seen an incredible spike in the number of folks that have come to our website, that have gone to the websites of our retail partners as well. That has been, it's fortunate that, the ownership and the leadership, we've had the foresight to continue to invest in that, and to invest in great retail partners who continue to allow us to do that, to serve those hardworking people. We have a saying, we really want to continue to make it faster and a lot easier for folks to choose Carhartt, because we know that they don't live to shop. We're an interesting apparel brand. Some apparel companies would look at their consumer audience and recognize that they may love to shop. That's not always the case, and we know the folks we serve, they'd rather be in the outdoors, they'd rather be building, they'd rather be doing something with their family or their friends, and we're the gear that's going to help them do that. And so our goal is to make it easier. So we've seen, though, just an incredible spike in our digital sales, and really we've shifted almost entirely all of our marketing towards digital as well. But thankfully, we've been preparing for this for a good 4 to 5 years, on the journey.
Got it. So as you think about, so through that, you're 100% digital. Have you found ways to be able to connect brand purpose and more, cause related ambitions that you have, whether it be some things recently, that you're about to do in other markets to actually drive bottom funnel, like to actually, see that through, or is it very much two different things? You've got tactics that are driving your bottom funnel, and then you've got your umbrella, brand purpose strategies, which really it's about engagement, it's about awareness, it's about, doing the right thing.
In many ways, it sounds like you're a media director. So when we in the future we may be talking. So we are trying to connect them all. We're incredibly fortunate. Our supply chain team is unbelievable. We still have facilities in the United States, and they shifted in the effort to address the PPE gap. And as we did that, because we were getting a lot of inquiries. A lot of folks were asking, Cart, can you help? Can you do something? And we're doing our best, and we're doing as much as we can, and we continue to manufacture and make as long as the need is there. But as that announcement, was made, and as folks became more and more aware of that, it's incredible what was happening in that awareness end of the spectrum. As people started to recognize, and they started to hear, our history of, making, we shifted manufacturing in World War I, we shifted manufacturing in World War II, and helped make, products during those times as well. So, it definitely led to a heck of a lot of people interested in Cart, a lot of probably people that haven't heard of us before. And so we saw it on, all the search platforms you could imagine, that folks run to. We saw a spike in interest and people actively then clicking through to visit our website and really learn more. And we've definitely connected those dots all the way through, and we continue to focus on doing that.
That's awesome, Tony. So I've got one more question, and then I think we can open up the questions if you've got it right. So the last one, and I think the one thing that I really respect about what the comms are that you put out there is that everything really involves real stories. It's real people. It makes it what you do extremely authentic, and it's very bottoms up. So how do you do it, right? And obviously it's easy that you see it and out there, but what are the systems that you have? What are the resources that you have to make sure that all of that goodness bubbles up to the top for you to leverage very, very quickly and authentically?
We certainly rely on some great outside partners, but quite honestly, by and large, we've built an internal creative team and marketing team, and they are unbelievable at building relationships. Really, since about 2011, we have focused only on portraying and telling the stories of real hardworking people. Those are not models that you would see in any of our videos or any of our, the ads that we run digitally or in other mediums. They're real, live, hardworking people. And it's really interesting too, because, everybody has a different way of working. And sometimes folks challenge us and say, look, Card, is that a model? That's not how you would swing that hammer. And we're like, no, that's a real person. That's just how they do it. But in the end, it comes from this place of, what if we could tell real stories about the people that we serve and protect, and as a marketing team, also help to promote them and market their business? And along the way, we've developed some really tight, close friends of Carhartt, that include, somebody like, Helena Sylvester of Happy Acres Farms, a first generation farmer. And, we've been able to, stay connected and telling and featuring her stories for quite a long time. Another friend of ours that we developed a friendship with, it's been a couple of years now, is Bertoni Faustin. He's Oregon's first Black winemaker. And he actually made a full suit out of our Carhartt brown duck material. And it ranges to, farmers and ranchers, like Five Marys, as well out in the West. We have a, great partnership with a woman named Bo in the city of Detroit who takes refurbished wood. These are just folks that we've developed relationships with, and we tell their stories. Our YouTube channel features many of their stories on it. We give them, as much of our creative material as we can so they can promote their businesses, because we know the more that they succeed, the more their communities succeed, and the more other people are inspired to do what they want to do, to live that lifestyle. And that's just one small contribution we can make, but we're proud to do it. And it takes a passionate team, but it keeps us connected and grounded and always listening. You learn a lot in those moments when you're spending days on a shoot, with folks that are actually working. These are not staged days. They're actually doing their jobs. And it's been fantastic. And, you know, our product team partners with us on this stuff too, and they learn a lot about the product. So yeah, we're fortunate. We love to be able to go out there. And in the end, you know, by marketing, you know, Carhartt, we're actually getting to market them. And that's the pivot we've made. You know, quite honestly, during these, you know, these times we're experiencing, we've been marketing the people that are really helping continue to drive and connect the commerce in the United States, who quickly became identified as essential heroes and everyday heroes in the eyes of the public. And it was so great for them to get that respect and recognition. And we love that we've been able to play a small part in it, and look forward to continuing to do that for many years to come.
That's awesome. Well, you know, congrats on all your success. I think, and I mean it, you guys are a great model, I think, for many others to follow, and how you bring those stories to life, and how you identify those people and put them on the pedestal is tip of the hat to you. There's a lot of good that you're doing out there. So that's awesome. With that, I'll play ignorant. How do we do questions here at Brand Innovators? How do we set these up?
That's a brave thing. Questions in a panel. I like it.
You know, the guy's asking questions is asking questions. Go figure. Are there questions here?
Yeah, I have no idea. They didn't give me that that ability.
Is it Brandon or Annie? Is there some guidance here for us? Oh, here we go. Would you be able to describe your marketing mix? What digital channel publishers do you value the most today? Appreciate the conversation. Cool. Here we go.
Our marketing mix. Got it. So, you know, I can't describe it as well as our director of integrated media can, but I can tell you this: you'll find a Carhartt in a lot of the places that we know where our consumers love to engage. Quite honestly, from a passion perspective, typically related to the outdoors or to their, you know, their vocation as well, from a publishing standpoint. And obviously, YouTube continues to play a powerful place in our media mix, and of course, Google and all the shopping and Google search activities that you could experience are also very, very powerful. So, and then of course, you've got the social media channels of Instagram, of Pinterest, of Twitter, and Facebook as well. We absolutely see a lot of engagement there.
To follow up, do you see that, are you actively pushing towards the social channels? I mean, with all the challenges within Facebook, and, you know, with fake news and YouTube and their challenges too, are you, from a brand safety perspective, is that a place you've become very comfortable in and you're pushing dollars in, or are you looking to redistribute and kind of look at it more holistically?
Yeah, we don't. I mean, I'd say we're definitely not going all in. That's for sure. It plays a role, and you know, I think it's fair to say that we're continuing to see migration to platforms or different ones. While Instagram's owned by Facebook, we certainly see a great deal more, you know, activity and you know, responses on the Instagram platform. We're building out Pinterest though. Pinterest continues to grow and scale. In fact, women are finding the brand in record numbers these days as well, which is awesome. I mean, we always say, you know, we're here to serve and protect hardworking people, and half of our population consists of women. And it's our job to continue to build that business and make sure that we've got the right product and messaging to represent them. So.
Cool. And I think there's one more question here. What brands do you think are doing a great job of connecting with their consumers authentically?
Oh, goodness gracious. That's always the...
It's not mine, man. I steered clear of that one. I didn't put you on the spot.
You know, right now, I think I have a hard time always listing them. What I can say is this: I am seeing more and more brands recognize the importance of being authentic and transparent, because we live in a day and age where folks get to talk to a brand directly like never before. The human interaction between brands and people probably is at an all-time high. While it's happening digitally, it's happening more than ever before. So within our own categories and really in others, there are quite a few of them. Sorry, but wasn't ready for that one.
All good.
That's
All
good.
right, I'm going to pass the ball over to you, Scotty.
Yeah.
By the way, great in that bow tie, man. I mean, that's the first bow tie that I've seen in 3 months. So it's a sight for sore eyes, man.
I was like, am I supposed to wear a tie for this? I was like, I work at Carhartt. We don't have ties. So
Well, Tony, you and I are going to have to get together. I mean, you're just down the street. I'm here just outside of Ann Arbor. Used to work in Dearborn, where Carhartt is headquartered. So I'm surprised our paths haven't crossed before now. But I'll definitely have to dress down if I head to Carhartt headquarters at some point.
it's very good to meet you, and I look forward to meeting you in person. So
Absolutely. Well, Scott, Tony, thank you so much for that discussion. I think they really captured the core of what is happening with so many brands that are really just a central part of people's lives, and can play a more important part as we move throughout the this transition here that we're seeing. Well, speaking of transitions, it's now time to transition over to our next presenter. We've got Kate Ardini, who's the Vice President of Brand and Sponsorship for John Hancock. She's a brand builder and marketer with extensive experience developing and executing integrated marketing campaigns for the financial services industry. At John Hancock, she's responsible for overseeing the company's national brand and sponsorship strategy, including campaigns and supporting media strategies. Prior to joining John Hancock, Kate held marketing roles at Deloitte and at a New York City-based broker-dealer. Kate, from Boston, my former hometown, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here today.
Excellent. And we're also joined by Brad Elders. Why am I saying David? That's on your screen. One of your kids must have taken over your Cisco account, Brad. Brad also joins us from the New York Post, where he is Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. He's been in that role for nearly a year. Prior to that, he was EVP and Chief Revenue Officer at Time Inc. And previous to that, he was a Senior VP of Sales at AOL, as well as many other sales and media jobs. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here.
All right, I'll let you guys take it away.
Awesome. The name is actually David, the legal name, but we'll save that story for another day. I'm thrilled to be here today, and like Sean, if those of you heard Sean Giancola this morning talk about, proud to be at a place like the New York Post that every day is committed to entertaining and informing all of our consumers across the country, at a difficult time like this. And I also, just in thinking about the last panel and really what Scott said, it's a tough time. And the word that I keep coming back to with all this stuff, and I think, the conference we're attending, the virtual conference we're attending today, speaks to that. It's hope. It's hope that, we can all come together, that we can work together, that we can come out of this thing, better people, better brands, better brothers, sisters, husbands, fathers, whatever the case may be. I think these are all signals that, it's important every once in a while. And in this case, it was kind of a global screeching halt for us to stop for a minute, and to think about our places in the world as people, as brands, as employees, and just inhabitants of this earth, to think about what we can do better. And, I'm really thrilled to participate in this today. I think it's, again, kind of an awesome coming together and, a celebration in a lot of ways of how people are doing really, really interesting things to help out. And, I can't wait for the rest of the day. But with that, I want to welcome Kate Ardini to our virtual stage. Kate, you want to talk a little bit about kind of what you do day to day at John Hancock, and then maybe, how from February to the middle of March, your job and everything that you thought you were doing may have changed.
Sure. Sounds like such an easy question. So at John Hancock, I oversee the brand and sponsorship. So just as an introduction for people that might not be familiar with John Hancock is a 150-year-old financial services company. We're based out of Boston, but have operations all throughout the United States. And we're actually owned by Manulife. They're our global company based in Toronto, Canada. And we have operations in Canada, in Europe, and in Asia. So it's really a global organization. At John Hancock, we sell life insurance. We offer mutual funds. We offer 529s. We offer financial advice. We offer 401ks and retirement plans. So kind of across the gamut of financial services, John Hancock is there for you. So my role is overseeing our brand through all of that messaging, getting it out to our target consumers, to the advisors and the producers that help sell our products, and ultimately to the community as well. And so the question of how my job changed from the end of February through March and still today, that's a lofty one. I think we have to think of it in two ways. Holistically, as a leader at John Hancock, for all of our employees, things obviously changed quite a bit. We quickly had to mobilize to get people working remotely. We're a company that's always had flexibility, but getting a large workforce to all work remotely with technology requirements and figuring what you're going to do with your kids and your dogs and all that good stuff was quite a labor of love. But I'll say just so impressed with our leadership and our employees, for people just like really figuring out how to get this done together. And everyone's been really transparent. We've done a really good job being like more flexible than ever before with people, and really understanding that, you know, what comes first during this time is, first off, your health during a health crisis, then your family, and then your security, and we'll help you through all of those parts. So I think that as a whole, the organization did a really good job mobilizing there and focusing on the wellness of employees first and foremost. My job as a marketer day to day changed quite a bit for a few reasons. Like many marketers, you know, some of our budgets had been reduced, and that's always a challenging thing for people. But more importantly, consumer mindset changed very, very quickly. And as a marketer, we have to be super tapped into what consumers are saying, thinking, and feeling. And we thought, you know, we knew exactly what people were thinking, and then COVID hit. And so we had to quickly go back, listen to what customers are saying, change our marketing strategy a little bit to reflect that new mindset. And so I'd say as a marketer, how my job has changed is we've really been forced in a really kind of positive way in the end to be much more agile. And so not, you know, working on these 6-month long campaigns that take forever to develop. We really have to be in the moment and understand what consumers are thinking, and work quicker, faster, and smarter to get messaging and add value to people's lives.
That's great. You know, it's interesting because, you know, you see the changes obviously that happen, and they happen so rapidly, you know, and like you, I mean, it was incredible. You know, we produce a paper every day, and, you know, we're reaching 100 million consumers on a digital platform, and the ability to go from, you know, being in the office, your day to day, to actually working remotely across teams and make it work, you know, I found to be pretty incredible too. And, you know, I think, and you know, I'd love to ask you if you think that the kind of the remote workplace is something that's kind of here to stay, or do you think, you know, kind of there'll be an in between, or what's your thesis or feeling on that, and how are you thinking about, you know, your team that's remote today, and, you know, re-entry, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's the topic on every single Zoom call that we have as a team is, when are we going back? And it's really interesting. Some people are just very anxious and ready to get back, and other people have really kind of settled into a rhythm of working from home, and I think they're actually liking it more than they thought they would. So a long way of saying I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, right? We've all proven that we can do our jobs from anywhere, in all sorts of situations, and that's nice to have that flexibility. It's also nice that, you know, during these times, we've really been able to incorporate like our real lives into our work lives. And so I think there's going to be, in terms of the, you know, the new workplace, there's going to be a lot more transparency about who you are outside of work. And at John Hancock, one of our core values is really sharing our humanity. And that, you know, that really comes through when you're on a call and someone's kid or dog or something just like jumps into the background, or someone just says, you know, I just need an hour today to not be on this Zoom call. And so I think that meeting in the middle is probably what's going to happen, but I think it's for good reason, because we're really going to be able to, you know, show who we are both at work and outside of work, which I think is a really great thing.
That's great. Pivoting a little bit, I mean, obviously, you know, it sounds like you guys made a great kind of transition from in the office to, you know, to being remote and continuing to get the job done and making sure your employees were taking care of childcare and health and, you know, everything that obviously is critically important. Being in the financial services, retirement, insurance business, with what's happened and, you know, the real loss of jobs and, you know, an economy coming to a screeching halt, how have you at John Hancock dealt with both communication and working with your customers through this difficult time? What are the
Yeah.
things that you guys have thought about and done?
Sure. So great question. I started off talking about what we did for our employees, and that was our focus first and foremost. But obviously, customers are just as important to us as an organization. So at John Hancock, our mission is to make decisions easier and lives better for all of our customers. And we really had to step up to the plate during this challenging time. As you mentioned, this is first and foremost a health crisis, but it's a financial crisis for many, many people. And so we had to take that on and really get out there, answer people's questions, be really accommodating to people whose financial situations have changed. I'd say probably one of the biggest areas is if you think about our 401k offering, a lot of people lost jobs during this time. And so people lost jobs, have 401ks, have to figure out what to do with that money. And some people need it in the shorter term, people need it in the longer term. So we really had a great responsibility to help educate people about how to leverage that money, how the CARES Act fits into that. Lots of legislation going on. So it's really about that customer education. And we do that in a few different ways. We obviously have an ability to call and ask for advice. We have advisors. We have a great website that has tons of great content that answers some of those questions. We tried to get them out in our social platforms. So actually just said to people, like, what are your financial questions? We'll help answer them. So really trying to be a partner through and through for all of our customers and let them know that, we're here for them during the great times, but what really proves a brand's value is what you do for customers during the hard times, which is right now.
That's great. And you touched on a minute ago, when you had to pivot your communication, your marketing, being in touch with your consumers and obviously know what they were feeling and going through. And I imagine this is kind of a real-time thing that you're doing as you're kind of gauging consumer health, et cetera. Have you seen a change at all from, let's call it the middle of March until now, in terms of their confidence in what they're feeling and thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I'm sure as marketers, we've all kind of seen that like 3 phases of COVID as a marketer chart. And it's kind of, you started off with a world, the world is completely different. And then we're in that tale of two cities where, some things have changed, but we're all kind of figuring out like what the next step is. And then that final step of that world transformed, right? The new normal, the next normal, whatever you want to call it. So I'd say, from a sentiment perspective, we've, people are seeming to not be, like, people are calming down a little bit, which is nice. The markets have come back, which is good. I'm by no means the person to comment on the health of the financial marketplace, but I'd say overall, the more education and information we've given consumers, they're feeling more confident in the decisions that they can make. So that's really our responsibility, right? Is to offer access to that education and really help people understand the decisions that they're making. And so we're doing our best to kind of offer the right kind of content based on what we're hearing from all of the tracking we do with consumers that they want for this moment in time.
That's great. Yeah. Hopefully the confidence continues to come back and, we get things open and keep moving forward. John Hancock has had, a long history, obviously in Boston, but really in philanthropy. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to think, we talk a little bit about your employees and a little bit about your customers. How do you think organizationally about the purpose of the brand or, your kind of local footprint and just getting involved in what's happening in the community?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, our mission for consumers and for customers is to make decisions easier and lives better, but we're equally committed to the community at John Hancock. And so John Hancock has been a longstanding partner of both the Boston Marathon and the Boston Red Sox. That's through our sponsorship strategy. And we have huge philanthropy efforts connected to both of those things. So that's a regular ongoing partnership that we have. Through the Boston Marathon last year, we raised about $14 million for nonprofit partners in Boston. It's over a 35-year partnership that we have with the marathon. So a great fundraising opportunity for all of Boston achieved through that. So during COVID, it was, April in Boston traditionally means the Boston Marathon, right? If anyone's been to Boston from Boston, we have our own holiday. It's a Monday in April. It's called Patriots Day. It's crazy to anyone that doesn't live in Boston, but if you live in Boston, it's a really, really special moment. And the marathons run that day. There's a big Red Sox game that day. It kind of symbolizes like the beginning of spring and people get really, really excited. And so April this year really looked quite different for Boston. No longer was it about, the marathon and the Red Sox and spring. It was, it was about solidarity and doing the right thing. and really, standing up for the frontline workers. So as a brand, we wanted to figure out how do we help start a movement that really, focuses on all this great work that's happening in the community. And for John Hancock, that really wasn't a unique thing. We've always been a really human brand. The whole idea of, human-centric brand and human era brands and being an empathetic brand, we've been doing that for years and years and years. So it's just a natural place for our brand to go. So as as the crisis kind of unfolded, we wanted to figure out a way to express that gratitude to those frontline workers. And so we did it in a few ways. We did something that we called our Light It Blue campaign. So basically, we teamed with the governor of Massachusetts, the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh, and the Boston Athletic Association, and encouraged all these big monuments, buildings in Boston and well beyond to turn blue starting April 6th to demonstrate their gratitude for all the frontline workers. And so there are some amazing pictures, everything from the Zakim Bridge in Boston turning blue to our own John Hancock building lighting up blue, to the TD North Garden lighting up blue. So all throughout Boston, you saw this amazing sign of solidarity, and John Hancock really helped start that movement. But it wasn't about us, it was about those frontline workers. And so in times like this, you think about the people that matter most, and we didn't matter nearly as much as those people on the front lines. So that was part one. Then we teamed with the Boston Athletic Association, and we're offering, actually, it was supposed to be the 124th running of the Boston Marathon this year. Unfortunately, it was just canceled, but we are donating 124 marathon bibs to hospitals in the Boston area to help their fundraising efforts. And so once the marathon is run again, those bibs will be leveraged for significant fundraising. The hospitals have always been a huge partner to John Hancock, but it was our way of kind of showing more to them and offering them more in terms of fundraising during a challenging time. We also made a donation to the Boston Resiliency Fund, $1 million. We were one of the first donors in Boston to do that. And that's a fund really set up to help all sorts of communities that have been impacted by the crisis. And then lastly, during what would have been marathon weekend, we did some really great things. First of all, we teamed with an organization called Off Their Plate, which helped restaurant workers who weren't working as much at the time prepare meals for people at the hospitals. So we fed throughout Boston, throughout the whole marathon weekend, we fed all of those hospital workers in partnership with Off Their Plate. So a really kind of nice way of showing our gratitude during a weekend that typically is about something very different in Boston. And then lastly, on Marathon Monday, they actually aired past marathons, and some of the most, the last couple of years have been really rainy and had some really unique, great moments and some really, photo finishes. So those were all aired on TV, and we produced a really great 30-second spot that once again really celebrated the solidarity of no one being out on Marathon Monday. And what those empty streets really stood for, it was that everyone was standing together, supporting Boston, supporting the frontline workers, and ultimately got that message out that that's what's important right now. And Boston will be back, our brand will be back, everyone will be out there, but right now it's really about solidarity and support and gratitude for those frontline workers.
That's terrific. I mean, that's a ton of great work. And I do have a daughter. I told Kate yesterday, I have a daughter that is a junior at Boston College. And for her, the marathon is something she looks forward to, the whole weekend. And it is a special time. And, I think what you guys have done just to continue the specialness in a different way is really pretty incredible. I've got one more for you, Kate, that's kind of an open-ended question. What's next? What do you think happens, kind of coming out of this thing, and how are, you at John Hancock thinking about, all of the, subtle and probably more obvious changes that, we can expect coming out of a crisis or a double crisis, as somebody said earlier this morning. What happens for you guys next?
Yeah, great question. Once again, not an easy question, but I think it's something we're all wondering, right? And I don't necessarily know if there's a right answer to this question, but I'll answer it in two ways. First, from a marketer's perspective, I think what's next is really, as I mentioned earlier, really changing the way we work, right? Listening to customers all of the time, understanding in real time what customers are saying, what they want from brands, and reacting to that quickly. So working in a more agile fashion. I think we've all probably read those articles about brands now producing spots in 4 or 5 days that would have typically taken months and millions of dollars. It's just a new way of working. and getting out that messaging in a much faster, agile way. So I think as a marketer, we're all going to be challenged to work in new and different ways. We've proven during this time that we can do that. And I think as we kind of go back to whatever the new version of normal is, that's going to be a new expectation, both from the organization, but more importantly from customers. Like, understand me, understand what I'm thinking now, and tell me how you can add value to my life. So a really fun and important challenge for marketers, I would say. And then I'd say from an industry perspective, for all brands, but especially in financial services, I mean, COVID has really exposed a lot of the inequities in the United States and beyond. And so as a financial services organization, we have a great responsibility to address some of those inequities. The news from the past couple of weeks obviously plays into that, but more importantly, it's a longer term commitment to really thinking about the world that we are a part of and what is our role in that world as a brand. And so I think coming out of this, and we're thinking about it now, I know many people on this call are, but we all do have a great responsibility. And I hope, like my genuine hope is that we all really take that seriously and think about how the world has changed. How can we make that change for the better?
Yeah, I hope for that too. Well said. We've got one question in the queue that I'll ask you, and if anyone else has more questions that they'd like Kate to take a stab at, feel free. The question is, with escalation of COVID, many people have lost their jobs, and there's been a great demand for investment instruments, insurance products, will preparation, and so on and so forth. How is a company like yours tapping this opportunity from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. As I mentioned earlier, one of our large product offerings are those 401ks. And so as people have kind of lost jobs and trying to figure out their, what they do with their money, do they roll it over? Some people have to take loans from their 401ks. I think that's probably the best example of things that we're hearing. As a brand, it's really how we're taking advantage, not taking advantage of that, but how we're, leveraging that need is offering that education and advice to people. So it is, letting people, we have great articles on our website, we have great social content, we have people you can call for advice. And so it's really being there for people in that moment, and letting them know that we're here for them, that we have that advice, we have those services. So offering them, all sorts of, however they want to interact with us, we'll be able to do that and provide those answers for them.
Great. Well, listen, Kate, thank you. And thank you to John Hancock for all you guys are doing. I mean, clearly, really, really active in the community and helping the front lines. And it's just terrific to see all the great work that you guys are doing.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the content today.
All right, Brad and Kate, thank you so much for that. My heart is beating proud as a Boston native, and I spent 20 years in the city before I moved out here to the Detroit area. And my heart is still there in many ways. I volunteered in the medical tent at the end of the Boston Marathon for many years when I was in undergrad and grad school at Boston University. And, John Hancock has been an icon around the city of Boston. Well, Kate, for 150 years, but certainly you visually see the impact of John Hancock, not only on Marathon Day, but every day. The Hancock Tower there, right in the center of Boston, an icon. And I think of the old Hancock Tower, which, if I can remember the old poem, this is a shorter Hancock building, but it's got a beacon on top that is most often it's either blue or red. And I think the poem goes, steady blue, clear view. This is a weather forecast. Steady blue, clear view, flashing blue, clouds are due, steady red, rain ahead, flashing red, snow instead. And then there's the asterisk. If it flashes during the Red Sox season, that means the game is canceled if there's a home game. So John Hancock coming to our rescue in so many different ways as part of the Boston culture.
Well, thank you. I'm impressed that you knew that poem. Even as an employee, I have to always go back and think about it a little more. So that's great. And yes, we were blue for quite a while, expressing our gratitude. And that was a great way to kind of leverage that iconic symbol of Boston.
It was perfect. It was perfect. And I guess that, that was the way we could predict the weather in the days before the weather.com app on our iPhones. So
yes, if only everything was so simple now.
Right. But again, it's about value. It's about that trusted relationship that the brand has, and continuing to play on that as we're in the fraught times. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to head into our next session here. By the way, for just joining us, this is Brands Across America. This is Brand Innovators' first attempt at this all-day live summit. I don't expect you to be here all day, even though I have to be here and the great staff at Brand Innovators has to be here all day. We are being joined throughout the day by just some amazing executives and brands from across America talking about where we have to go from here. Stories of hope, stories of change, stories of brands that are establishing trust, building trust, and creating value. Now, realize too that, this was initially planned as part of a response to the COVID crisis. We've got another crisis on our hands that's most recently reared its head in the last week or so. I think we'll be touching on that a little bit, but these are fraught times, and it's difficult to stay on top of one crisis, let alone two. So I am sure that in future episodes we'll be addressing other societal crises and how brands are best poised to be able to respond to that. So now we've got Paul Cantonis, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Husay. And Paul is a strategic marketing executive that has over 25 years of experience navigating business throughout changing marketing landscapes.
Keep going, Scott. Keep going. It's beautiful. Keep going. I love when you read it. Oh.
Paul is a trusted advisor and recognized industry leader who combines his multi-industry experiences in digital media and marketing with proven marketing methodologies that can be transferred to new battles across any industry. This is amazingly written, Paul. Paul's been a regular contributor to ANA CMO Growth Council, has served as president of the Global Online Video Association, and as chairman of the International Academy of Web Television. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Hey, your words, not mine. I'm just a reader. Paul is being joined by Dane Atkinson, who is the co-founder and CEO of Adecco. He's spent his life building startups as a founding CEO, and over the course of nearly 3 decades, he's created such products touching much of humanity. He's employed thousands and grossed a few billion in equity value. Not so shabby. Dane started his first company, SenseNet, at the age of 18, the tender age of 18, which built the first wave of internet business for Fortune 500 companies before the company was acquired by Sun, which of course you now know as Oracle. Squarespace is the exception, having become a large private enterprise. And Dane sits on the board and mentors nearly a dozen companies in the New York tech space, and he's presently focused on empowering coffee shops through Adecco. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to chat about these days. They're exhilarating.
And I believe we have a number of folks who are joining us from the coffee industry as well. I tell you, I love coffee, so it is absolutely a thrill to see people like Faith Lee, who's the CEO and co-founder of Bird and Branch Coffee. Faith, along with her husband, Brandon Lee, owns Bird and Branch, a specialty coffee shop down in Hell's Kitchen. Faith is a Harvard graduate and an opera singer. We'll see if we can coax an aria out of her while she's here. Faith recently switched careers to start Bird and Branch with a goal of providing an on-job training program for people with barriers to employment. And interesting to note, Faith and Brandon, just to mix things up a little bit in these crazy times, Faith and Brandon just had their first child, Adelaide, in March. Faith, congratulations and welcome.
Faith is on mute.
Okay, well, that good to know she's
Get off. Yep.
Sorry. Thank you. It's good to be here. Sorry about that.
You know, we're all kind of doing this on the fly, even though it looks like a really slick and well-produced thing. We're all humans here, so that's all right. In addition, we have Jeremy Lyman, who's the CEO and co-founder of Birch Coffee. He's a native New Yorker, and he was processing loans for a mortgage company while daydreaming about what it would be like to get paid to hang out in a coffee shop all day. He moved to New York from, excuse me, I'm just kind of stumbling through the bio here. Paul Schrader, it says moved to New York City. That must be our next entry here.
No, Jeremy, you want to jump in there?
I'll just jump in, Scott. So I'm a native New Yorker. I'm from New York. It was funny. I was wondering which bio you were going to be reading because there's just been so many iterations of what that looks like. Yeah, no, I'm from New York, and we opened the first one about 10 years ago, and we're up to 14, and just looking to the future and see what lies ahead. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for that smooth rescue there. Occasionally, even someone as polished as I am needs bailing out. So I do appreciate it. And finally, we have Ji-Yoon Han, the head of innovation from Bean and Bean Coffee. Ji-Yoon is a Q Arabica grader Q processing generalist and was judge for the 2019 U.S. Coffee Championships Brewer Cup prelims. Ji-Yoon sources, cups, roasts, and brews coffee for Bean and Bean Coffee in New York. She's a student at the Harvard Business School, where she's co-president of the Coffee and Tea Club. She writes about cool coffee things for Barista Magazine. Ji-Yoon, welcome.
Awesome, Scott.
Happy to be here.
You all take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott, very much. Look, I'm honored to be here, part of Brands Across America, with Brand Innovators, a diverse community of brand marketers and solution partners from all ethnicities, colors, genders, and backgrounds. We all are connected through our shared love of growing our businesses, marketing, and advertising. And for today, our panelists and I are clearly all very committed to fostering diversity and inclusion for growth in our industries and for a better world. And that really is what brings our session together today around what is called New York Loves Coffee, an initiative born from a pandemic to get coffee to NYC healthcare workers, over 35,000 cups of coffee and counting. These tokens of gratitude are for the nurses, doctors, and first responders helping New Yorkers, and at the same time helping businesses. So what is really important here, and what we're going to get into, is how these businesses have taken in their minds what was a brand purpose and what they started to do in working with their various communities, and really turn it into brand action to not only help people, but also to be smart and about their businesses. And what I'd like to do is open it up to everybody to talk a little bit about specifically your brand purpose, and give a little bit more color on your business. So if we want to start, let's say we'll start with Jeremy. Jeremy, I love how you talk about what it means to have coffee. Let's talk about the info behind your business. Give a little bit more color on Birch Coffee.
Sure. So thanks, Paul. And just as Scott had mentioned, the company was started because I wanted to just kind of hang out in coffee shops all day long, and that was really where Birch Coffee was born. But it's turned into so much more, because I came from a service industry background, and one thing we saw in the coffee industry that was lacking was a higher level of customer service. And so that's been our dedication. Our dedication has been for years on how to engage customers, how to create more of an empathetic experience, because we're more or less the first interaction that most people have in their day. And we have, whether we know it or like it or not, we have the ability to set the tone for somebody's day. Someone gets out of bed and they stub their toe, it's generally kind of all downhill from there. And the same goes for engaging with a barista. And when a customer comes in, we want to give them the absolute best experience possible. And what kind of happened, over the last several months is we knew there was an opportunity for us to be donating cups of coffee. But what we thought was needed in addition to that was that engagement, that interaction. And so we had a coffee cart that we had been sitting in our roast house for years, not being used. I bought a generator. It's a little loud, so we have to speak in high tone. So, but we set up in front of hospitals, and we've probably done between 15 and 20 at this point. And healthcare workers, they just line up, and we give them that level of interaction. And we serve them that cup of coffee, because that's what we think is missing right now. And I know that's one of the highlights of my day, is when I can go into a coffee shop and just have that engagement and interaction with with a barista, it changes my day. And so that's, for us, that's how we're contributing. And we're also donating and dropping off bags of coffee and cold brew and all that to hospitals that we can't set up in front of. But the highlight for me has been just setting up, even, it's been just for 2 hours at a go. But it's been game changing, and it's been a really, truly incredible experience. So
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Faith, why don't you talk a little bit about your mission at Bird and Branch and how that has kind of dovetailed into everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, so for Bird and Branch, me and my husband, we started this shop actually quite opposite of Jeremy. We didn't really have a dream of hanging out in coffee shops. We actually didn't drink coffee before we started Bird and Branch. Yeah, oddly. But we actually had an idea about opening a retail shop that provides job training for people who have barriers to employment. So that was kind of the vision we had for Bird and Branch. We kind of morphed into coffee because we thought about what kind of job skills would be transferable. And being a barista is something that you can learn in our shop and then go out to restaurants and coffee shops around the country, around the world, and do similar tasks in coffee. It's a transferable skill that people can take with them. So that's why we opened Bird and Branch. And we have fallen in love with coffee, and we've actually seen how coffee changes the world, not just where we are here in New York, but at the source. And we're really committed to supply chain transparency and just making sure that we're taking care of not just our employees or our customers, but also the people who grow, roast, everyone down the supply chain needs to be taken care of. So that's something that we're really passionate about. And yeah, so once the pandemic hit, it made sense for us to try to keep going. I think for me, a big desire is to keep going, to continue job training. If there's no business, then there is no training, and we've lost the mission. So we were worried about our staff, so we had to close the shop. But we had people, friends of ours who are in the healthcare industry, talking about how people need coffee, people need food in the hospitals. And so it really kind of coincided with how our customers were trying to support us. They kept asking how they can support us, and it just made sense that to tap into our customer base because they wanted to help. And my husband is born and raised in New York. He was here during 9/11, and he saw how much New Yorkers wanted to help. And he felt like this was an opportunity to get our community on board too. So it was a great way for everyone just to come together to tackle a need that was very clear. So it was really exciting to see people really chip in, purchase these breakfasts, and it was a joy to see reactions from hospitals. So it's been really encouraging.
Fantastic. Jiyun.
So glad to be here. I am an innovator at Bean and Bean Coffee. Bean and Bean Coffee was founded by my first generation parents who immigrated to America in the early 2000s. Now we have 4 locations across New York City, and we're roasting all of our beans out of our roastery in Queens, New York, which is one of the areas that has been called the epicenter of the pandemic. Speaking to our brand purpose, my mother and I source all of the coffees that we serve at Bean and Bean. So it's a mother-daughter team that's curating all the coffees, and we're super committed to making coffee purchasing an intentional act whereby we are supporting gender equity. So we purchase beans from women coffee farmers directly at origin, and part of the proceeds goes back to the community that we're buying coffee from, so that the women are able to improve and enhance their quality of coffee the following year, which is directly then tied to their livelihoods. So on top of that, we're very committed to being active participants of the local economy, meaning we source ingredients and supplies locally whenever possible. So across the entire supply chain, I would say that Bean and Bean's core mission is to make coffee inclusive and equitable for everybody along the supply chain. As to talk about how how our brand purpose relates to brand action in these time of the pandemic. Because safety was our first and priority through the pandemic, we decided to close down our shops a few days before Cuomo declared New York State on pause. And we had to quickly come up with a way to maintain our connection with the customer. So we've been very vocal about connecting with our customers via the internet, and we quickly put up an online storefront. So in addition, with the amazing New York Loves Coffee community, we've been able to successfully send thousands of cups of coffee to frontliners across all of New York City. So through the pandemic, we really feel to our bones the power of community and the role that coffee shops have to play in the local community.
That's great. Thank you, Jiyun. And so Dane, you know, you're different than these companies here, is that you're not a coffee shop, but you work very closely with these coffee shops, and you just heard that what Jiyun said, everyone had to do it. There was this moment of we all have to shut down. And so let's tell me a little bit about your history with focusing on small businesses and what this moment meant when you realized that all these businesses were closing down.
Sure. Well, thank you for being here. It's great to see all our friends on here as well. So for myself, I've spent my life trying to help small businesses. Every company I've built has been in the purpose of making them succeed, because I think the color and creativity in our society all comes from small business. I've been really fortunate to, in this last year or so, focus on the coffee shops, which actually Jeremy was our first customer and helped re-inspire me to the value of small business operators, because people in coffee are goddamn awesome. And we face the same thing. So we have a business that uses predictive technology to sort of understand what a shop is going to buy. That turned into us building a supply line to sort of support them by making sure they're getting good cost goods that are coming from a healthy process. And then the apocalypse happened. COVID, yo! And we happen to have a lot of big brands, and all of them, for the most part, shut down. So we saw that an 88% closure across the country, even more so in New York of our brands. Presently, our stats are showing 57% of the coffee shops in New York are open in some stands, but it was a long window. And we were just really fortunate to have such great customers and new friends that are sort of here today that want to do something good. And we happen to have some trucks, we happen to have some people, and we happen to have some geeks. So we really dove in the sense of trying to help facilitate the inspired energy they have to give coffee to the community that needed it the most. So we were very lucky to, as you said, help participate in the traffic of tens of thousands of coffee cups to locations that really needed it. And it was inspiring for our team. Beyond that, we're just doing everything we possibly can to help coffee shops get back on their ground. So we're acquiring other companies to make sure we've got a rounded out technology. We're trying to make sure that we can give them the capital and the products they need, and just be there to see them come back. Because we're somewhat scared of a world where it's for rent signs and Starbucks, and that the color and creativity that everyone here brings isn't strong. So that's our purpose. And I think, as we talked about a million times, Paul, because you were back in my first startup when I was 18, that was so nicely highlighted. I think brand comes from action. And so our action is to sort of be there to support folks. And I think that tells the story of what we want to do.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's take another look back, and then we're going to look forward, right? Because we've come from one situation and now we've moved into another situation here. So looking back, what was the moment where you realized, I know you all had to shut down businesses and everything went on pause, right, as Jiyun mentioned. What was the moment you realized, wow, things are not going to be the same and I need to make changes within my business to adapt to this new climate? What was that moment you realized that? And I want to know specifically, what was the first step you took in making that change? I'll leave that open to whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, just as I was talking before, we had a lot of scar tissue left over from 9/11 and other events. So I think it was in February that we started to panic that things were going to change, and started to try to transit information to our customers. We made massive changes in our own organization to prepare for it, and have done a lot to try to come up with systems that would help. Just because when 9/11 happened, as Faith is saying, like, a lot of us New Yorkers have been there and know that it takes a long time to get back out of, and if the community really wants to help you, you've got to be ready to last through it. So I think it was well before Cuomo, which I think was the right thing to do, sort of stepped in and closed things up. I'm just watching the numbers sort of shift in our town.
Right. So for you, it was that moment there in February, early on. Jeremy, what about you when you realized that, wait a minute, we're no longer going to be connecting the same way we connected before? How are we going to change this?
Yeah, I think it went kind of, it came in waves. I think first, initially, there's just this like, oh, no, everything's going to be just fine. Everything's going to be fine. Nothing's going to change. And then you start to see all of these things just start to actually happen. And it's this denial, which I think then kind of all these other realities kind of kick in. And, I think the point was when we had to make, because we're technically, I guess, essential. And I think there were choices that we could have made to stay open. But we had to start really thinking about our staff. We had to really start to think about our customers, and just making sure that we're ensuring those safety. I think it was about the time when we had to decide to, shut down all of the stores, because we have about 100 employees, and it wasn't something that we took very lightly. It was very, very difficult, especially because of all the work that we've put in, and just to see everything just come to a screeching halt. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And the truth is, as far as like, what do we do now? What next steps do we take? This is, none of us have ever experienced anything like this. And I think that any steps we took were the best that we could in that particular moment, because there's still times where it's like, I don't know. I just don't know. So as long as we're keeping things moving forward and trying to do the best and make the best decisions that we can for the safety of our staff, and for the safety of our customers, I think everything else kind of just fell into place. But I would say it was probably mid-March, where all of that stuff started to kind of unfold. And so,
yeah. Jean, what about for you?
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with Jeremy more in how this all came in waves. So I think for us, we saw what was going on globally, right? We saw what happened in China, and then in Italy, and then South Korea, and there was this initial stage of being in denial. But then seeing government responses to what was happening globally, things became more real. And I think the breaking point for us was in early March, when a few of our barista friends voiced to us that they didn't feel safe on the floor. And we took this very seriously and evaluated whether it made sense to close. And this was way before Cuomo declared New York State on pause. So I think in coming to this decision, we had to take in all the information that we could, knowing that there were no best practices. And even now, we're forming what the best practices are together as a collective coffee community in New York City.
Yeah. So Faith, I want to know from you specifically, as CEO of Bird and Branch, at what point did you realize my business model is changing and must change as expenses change, as revenue lines change, as we potentially have to introduce new products? At what point did you realize I am no longer business as usual on the business side?
Yeah, well, I feel like I have an interesting perspective because I had my baby on March 3rd. So I was actually not in the shop at all right around when that happened. My husband was in the shop and coming back and forth. And the moment that we kind of realized this was really serious is we're right next to Broadway. So a lot of theaters around there. And he passed by a Broadway show, which had a line out the door about to let patrons into the show. And somebody came out of the theater and was like, sorry, the show's been canceled. And that signified to my husband that this is serious. Like, this show is they're about to put on a show in 20 minutes, and they're willing to tell all these people who have tickets that they got to go home. And we're right in the thick of that, right by Times Square. So that was the moment where we're like, okay, this is serious. And then, the idea of like having to take the subway, all of our staff are coming from different boroughs. and they're having to commute. So not feeling like good about asking our staff to get on the subway every day. That was kind of an impetus to make us think about closing our shop. But yeah, the moment we realized that people don't need our cafe is kind of like a really cute Instagrammable cafe. We have specialty lattes, and it's a cute space and people love to be in it. But all of a sudden, nobody can be in cafes anymore, and people don't need cute lattes. So thinking about as a business owner, you have to think about what does your community need right now and how can I fulfill that? And so that's kind of that mindset we had with the healthcare workers, because there was a real need there. And while we could provide something very simple, it was something that we could do. As a coffee shop, you can't create a vaccine, you can't get on the floor at the hospital to help, but you can give a little bit of caffeine and sustenance. So that's kind of how we decided to pivot our business.
Right. So all of you demonstrated that there was this ability to expand, pivot, align your business with the needs of your community locally and beyond that. And I applaud you all on the work that was done with New York Loves Coffee, because those cups of coffee, those moments of pause where they could have enjoy that nice latte or a nice coffee or a nice tea really made the change. We saw many, many, many smiles behind the masks, and you guys demonstrated that ability. Now looking at what we are facing in our respective cities and the unrest that people are feeling, the uneasiness, what do you see that your role can be within the community, or what do you see expanding even further? What are you evaluating even further as now we come out of COVID and enter into this new phase of our cities?
So I feel like the fact that we've tapped into this idea that people can help other people through our shop is something we've been thinking about. We understand we're going to have to keep adapting. It's going to be a long time before people can enjoy being in our coffee shop. So, something that we've noticed is being in Hell's Kitchen, being near Times Square, is that the homeless population has been hit very, very hard. And I've experienced it just walking to my shop. People are desperate because there are no tourists and nobody wants to get within 6 feet of anybody. And interactions that used to be at least cordial on the street have become very defensive almost. And I felt it myself. I'm walking with a baby who cannot wear a mask, and there are times when I want to run away from people. But I feel like that's something that I really want to address in our community, because that's not what New York is, and that's not how I want to run my business or how I want to run my life. And so there are a lot of needs now, and for us, we're thinking about the homeless community and how our customer base and our community, the coffee community, can provide in some way, because as the economy continues to decline, there are going to be more people in need. And how can we as a company provide for them? These are just thoughts. They're definitely not solidified, but something that we've been thinking about.
Okay. Jeremy, you've started to open up your business on one of the flagship stores, right, on 86th in the city?
We opened last week. Yeah, we opened one store, and we took a lot of time in order to do that. It was very well thought out. And just to kind of a note on what you were saying before, it's, I think everything that's going on now has kind of just become just the focal point, but I think we're still very much in this pandemic. And I think it's just, this is this additional layer. There's so many unknowns. And I think that one of the pieces that we've been just going back and forth and just talking about is, what is what are people's behavior going to be like after when we're on the other side of this? And it's so difficult to try to figure that out. And I think that, just like what Faith was saying, there's a lot of opportunity because there's a lot of people in need. And I think one of the most amazing things that Odeco does, and that we've been working on before, is taking all of the things that we don't sell in that one day and figuring out places where we can contribute that and donate it be giving to a lot of people that are in need. And, you know, it's continuing to do that and just be as good a bunch of human beings as we can possibly be, and understand that we're going to have difficult conversations with people. And there's all of these things that, you know, and there's, you know, I was very much expecting a lot of our stores to not be intact. You know, fortunately they were, but it's just, and it's being okay with that, and just kind of having this deeper level of understanding, where whether or not I agree with it, I completely, like, I understand it. And that's why I think I'm in this industry, is because I've developed this level of empathy. I'm able to kind of empathize with our customers, whether if they're having a bad day, like, I get it. I can understand that happens, because I've had those bad days. So, you know, it's just kind of being patient, and not forcing anything, and not making, you know, putting our staff to feel like they need to come in or they're not going to have a job. Like, they have a job if they want to work when they want to work, and that's it, you know. So it's just kind of being open-minded and being able to pivot, like you were, you know, that's what it's about. It's about, if something's not working, we pivot and we figure out something, because we've all worked so hard to build what we've built. And to just kind of just throw our hands up in the air and be like, well, you know, I tried. That's not enough. That doesn't work.
So Jiyoon, you hear from Faith talking about identifying populations in need and looking for ways to help them. And Jeremy's talking about continuing to have that empathy and understanding your role within the community and people's lives. You know, you've taken a deep look into your supply chain and continue to find ways to benefit people within there. And just from an overall broader innovation perspective, what are you starting to look at that are areas for you to adjust your business or to give back even more to your communities?
I think Jeremy and Faith touched on the consumer end really beautifully. And of course, we're going to continue thinking about how can we keep delivering these small doses of joy through our coffee cups in a changing environment. At the same time, I'm talking actively with the producers that we source coffee from and really trying to understand how is the pandemic affecting the way they're producing and milling their coffee, and how is this going to affect their outlook next year, and how can we, as their roaster that purchases coffee from them, how can we continue to support them? So we're really trying to evaluate the way the pandemic is affecting from the origin to the consumer end, and trying our best to keep the coffee flowing.
Right, that's great. And Dane, you know, you're working with these businesses that are really part of their community, champions of diversity and inclusion, and really stepping forward and trying to help their community. What do you see coming in the next couple of months for these businesses, and what are the challenges some of them may have to face, and how all these partners within the community can work together?
Well, first off, you guys are bloody amazing. Like, can you just hear 4 people all trying to make the world better in their areas? Like, I'm just really happy that we get to work with folks like this. So we're the geeks, right? And it's our job to help on that front. We've been watching the data. So far, we see street traffic is about 70% of what it was pre-COVID. Overall spending is about 88%, but in the city, shops are running at below 40%. Our worry is that there's going to be a bunch of bounces in the market in the next quarter or two, where things look to come back and then pull back, and look to come back and pull back. So we are at large very concerned for the category, and trying to find out how we can help on our part, because as Jim was saying, like, the supply chains all over the world, even very locally, are crumbling. We have partners who are tossing, you know, thousands of gallons of milk, and we have other partners who are demanding that you pay a minimum to deliver it, right? There's just lots of systems that weren't designed for this future, and I think everyone needs to sort of figure out a way to adjust and take that sort of Jeremy's line and find ways to partner and work through it for it to actually come together. But it's not to be pessimistic, but we do not see an easy road ahead. On the inverse, though, watching the European data and the rest of the world, coffee as a category is doing very strong. It's one of the first places to come back, and USR is coming back very strong. So there will be a really strong industry on the other side. It's just not weeks away. It's probably months away.
Got it. Well, listen, everybody, I'd like to say thank you so much for sharing your experiences here, sharing your knowledge, having all these New Yorkers on together, working together to help these businesses within New York, helping the populations here within New York has been an absolutely wonderful experience, and so thankful to be a part of it. And for those of you who have been listening, please check out NewYorkLovesCoffee.com. Please check out Bean and Bean, Birch Coffee, Bird and Branch, Odeco. Everybody is really doing a lot. So thank you very much, Brand Innovators. And Scott, I think it's all you now.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Paul, and all of our panelists. It's great to hear a bunch of brand marketers who are simply so passionate about their brand. And, I often say that for brand managers, being so passionate about their brands, it's not always shared by consumers. Consumers don't wake up first thing in the morning thinking about your brand. Well, with you guys, they do. And what a beautiful thing that is. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thanks, Scott.
Move on to another brand that is associated with coffee, and that is Panera Bread. We have with us Chris Hollander, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Panera. He joined Panera in 2010 as VP of Marketing, and he assumed the role of Head of Marketing in 2014 and then promoted to Senior VP of Marketing in 2016. He oversees all the brand strategy, traditional advertising, digital communication, paid and earned, public relations, cafe, in-cafe point of purchase materials, customer engagement marketing, on and on and on. I could say lots of things about him, but you know him as the CMO of Panera Bread, Chris Hollander.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right, glad you're here, Chris. And
I'll work on that upfront two piece. We probably can shorten that a little bit, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And here with Chris is Eric Sanders, who's the VP of Sales for Blaze, which is a customer engagement platform that delivers messaging experiences across push, email, apps, and more. Eric, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you having us here.
All right, I'll let the two of you take it away.
Thank you. Chris, first of all, thanks for taking the time to share your experiences as we're going through some pretty novel and wrenching changes here from the economic standpoint. Full disclosure, I'm a longtime My Panera member, huge Panera fan, and every time I get on the road with my family, I make a stop for a search for a Panera on the road so I can eat something healthy on a long road trip. So shout out to your restaurants, places like St. Joseph, Michigan, and Sandusky, Ohio, Onalaska, Wisconsin. Really enjoy the brand, really enjoy the food, and again, really enjoy you being here. Appreciate it. I'd love to start. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add about yourself by way of introduction, your role at Panera there, and some of your responsibilities beyond what Scott has said.
No, I think, Eric, we can get right into it. I think along the course of this conversation, I'm sure we'll touch on a lot of things about how we are doing things differently these days. So let's get right at it.
Great. So your industry and certainly your business, you've been at literally the front line of the pandemic over these last few months. Your company, and I'm sure your team members have borne a huge economic burden and personal burden of what's been happening. I'd love to open up just by asking kind of how are you doing? How are folks at the company doing? How are your frontline team members doing? What's happening out there?
Thanks. It's challenging times, no doubt. I've learned a lot personally about how to manage through this. I've learned a lot about myself personally through this whole this crisis. What's interesting for me is seeing how the team has responded. And I couldn't be more proud of the organization overall, as well as my team specifically, for stepping up and working as they have through this. We've seen really no change in production at all. In fact, I'd argue it's probably even been increased, if anything. And it's amazing to think about that when you think about the challenges that are affecting people these days. And what I've learned most importantly is that what affects me and the challenges I'm facing is very different from some of my peers and some of the people who work on the marketing team. So it's been really eye-opening to understand what people are going through and what they're able to accomplish in the face of these challenges. So it's made me think about how to market differently. It's made me think about how to lead differently.
That's inspiring. A little bit of silver lining to the cloud, and certainly that empathy kicking in for what others are going through as you and all of us experience this very, very differently. I'm curious the connection to Panera. I know you have a very strong brand mission and vision as a company, set of beliefs. I'd love to get an understanding if you think some of that has tied into the way you've seen your team members respond and what you guys have done over the last few months.
Absolutely. I believe in times of crisis and challenging times, the most important thing for a company to do is to go back to their mission and understand who they are at their core, and let that lead you as a North Star through good times and bad. So for us, to simplify in consumer language, we want to make sure that everyone has access to good eating. We think good eating brings out the best in all of us, you know, and by good eating, that's more than just the food you eat. It's how you eat it, where you eat it, what's going into the food, what you know about the food, the transparency that the company has to talk to you about it. So you ultimately, in Panera's case, leave feeling better than when you came in. Now, when you say leave feeling better than when you came in, that implies an in-cafe experience, right? So that's not exactly the same anymore. And you know, now if I said if we want to make good eating available for all, it's probably more about making good eating available for all safely and stress-free, right? So we're doubling down on what that means during a pandemic. And I think a lot of our actions stem directly from that belief of ours.
I'm curious if you want to talk about some of those actions that you're taking specifically, safely and stress-free. What are some of the initiatives you've taken in restaurant and communicating those from your go-to-market perspective?
Sure, and I'll tell you, as I begin to speak about this, I've been so heartened to see that the entire industry has taken up this cause. What some might have seen as a point of difference around safety really is an ante these days. It's table stakes because everyone needs to do that. So in our case, it's some things like contactless delivery. It's things like mindful packaging. And let me just expound on that a little bit. For contactless delivery, well, we